Hi everyone, I'm here with Frank Teruel, CFO of Arkose Labs. Today we will be discussing pig butchering scams.
Your topic today, pig butchering and romance scams, is so much in the forefront of what's happening. So delighted to jump in.
So maybe we should start by explaining what pig butchering scams actually are, why they're called like that. Did they become more prevalent during COVID or in recent times?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunately the name's kind of gross. I mean, it's really it's fattening up the pig before you take it home and eat it, right? So it really is about how do you really increase the potential return on a target. So get them involved, fatten it up, and then take it down. And yes, absolutely during COVID when people were more isolated, this really took off because people were craving community. And I think about, yes, back to the psychology part of it. All of us want to be in community. All of us to be connected to somebody. And so you really saw a rise in that when people were more susceptible to answer unsolicited messages or a text from quote unquote somebody they haven't heard from in a long time. And that's often the entry point where people go, "Hey, is this still you, Frank? I've changed my contacts. I lost your contact," or something like that. So I think categorically, on without equivocation, COVID really during COVID and the lockdown, this really took off because we were all virtual. And I think what's happened post COVID is that some of the mitigants, some of the things that you could do to protect yourself have really gone away. Here's a great example. One of the telltale signs of pig butchering is that I start to fatten up the pig. So I reach out to Frank. I go, "Hey, remember me from high school? Haven't seen you in a long time." And they'll share little data points like, "Hey, we both had the same English teacher. We went to the same football game, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe at college, we all attended the same college bar." And you begin to lower your guard because you have these shared associations and experiences. And what happens is post COVID, with the advent of AI, it's so easy to build those profiles. I mean, I can simply go into Chat GPT and go, "Hey, what's the bar next to Virginia Tech? And what happened on the football game on this day? And who was the most favorite professor in English during 1990 or 2000, whatever year you were in college?" And then armed with that information, suddenly, "Hey, Frank, it's Joe. Remember me from English class? We both have Mr. Farmer." And they really build these connections where you go, "Oh, it must be legit." The other thing that changed is one of the telltale mitigants was meet the person in person or get on a Zoom call to make sure this person is legit. And oftentimes people that are involved in pig butchering they don't want you to see them. It's always through text and that kind of communication. But the problem today is deep fakes are really easy on the internet. I mean, it's just, so it's not that common. So if you said to somebody, "Well, I just want to make sure it's you. I don't remember what you look like. Let's jump on a Zoom," you might be jumping into a deep fake, session. So a lot of those early telltales that you see are still there, but the mitigants are evolving because you have a situation where technology is just amplifying their ability to create these shared connections and to fool you into believing that this is somebody you have a relationship with. So it's super fascinating psychological fraud for sure. I was gonna say what's interesting about this particular scam is that it's this perfect confluence of psychology and technology. Great fraudsters are amazing psychologists, and they play off of known human emotions and shared experiences and all those things that let you lower your trust down. So it's a topic that's near and dear to us. We protect many of the sites where folks go to meet people, and it's really important to us to really educate the public on the fact that this is a very, very big scam. If you look at the numbers on it, it's just amazing. The just last year, the FBI figured just in the U.S. this is about a $4 billion problem. And then Time Magazine ran something earlier this year that said if you look at it globally over the course of the last 4 years, they think it's a $75 billion problem just tracking cyber currency through different exchanges. I mean, it's a huge lucrative target for the adversary, and I think that's why they go after it. And when you conflate technology and psychology in a way that's so easy, it's a very successful, unfortunately, a very successful fraud.
And how do scammers find their victims? Do they cast a wide net or do they look for certain types of individuals?
Yeah, Anna, this is a great question. So first of all, remember, this is about money, right? So the profile always starts with finding individuals with means or individuals that are investing or individuals that online have created profiles where, wow, this person has their own business, this person's recently a widow or a widower, or they've recently gone through a relationship breakup. All of that information's online. And so one of the things we always tell people is really cleanse your online footprint because there's so much information out there that can be used to profile you. Your status, the cars you drive, the places you visit, how many times you went to Hawaii, all these things are part of the profile build, right? And then the issue becomes, okay, I'm going to start a relationship with somebody who has the means to quote unquote be fattened up so I can then take the money. So definitely, as they look for it, they're looking for certain categories of people, certain financial status, a certain, a relationship status, a certain age where they're much more likely to be susceptible to this. People, for example, that are retired and are no longer in the working community or out of community are very susceptible to this because, again, they're kind of lonely and looking for connections. Those are the kinds of things that are easily profiled today. And with the amount of data online and now, Gen AI to be able to assimilate all that information quickly, you can build profiles very, very quickly. All our information is online. I know, I'm sure with a quick search, your mobile numbers on, everything about us is online somewhere. And so, the initial point of contact is far less difficult than you think because I can build profiles very, very quickly using AI and then just simply start, making those phone calls and making those connections.
Yeah, so you were talking about taking care of our online footprint. So mostly, I guess, social media. So how can we be vigilant and protect ourselves on using social media?
Yeah, I think the reality in social media today is that you have to understand that not everybody that consumes your information is your friend. So I always tell people, first and foremost, make sure your profiles are all private. Make sure they're only connected to the group of individuals that you know. Secondly, even within that group, be careful because your friend's your friend till they're not, right? Think about it. Jean is good till she's not. So you never really, it's a very binary switch that goes on. So be careful of what you share about economic status, about great wins. LinkedIn is another great area where people mine information. They look at it and go, wow, we just sold this company and made a ton of money, those kinds of things. So be careful what you share and have a little bit of skepticism, realizing that the people that will consume this content, if it's broadly available, may be nefarious in their intent. So that's number one. Number two, make sure that when you are solicited, when someone reaches out to you and says, hey, remember me, be very, very skeptical. If someone you haven't seen in a long time, most of us have a very common and frequent connections with our groups, right, with our community. And when someone comes out of the blue, your initial reaction should not be euphoria, like, wow, I haven't seen Kenny since high school. It should be skepticism, like, hey, who is this really? How did you get my number? And do not engage. Do the research first. Do not respond. They're looking for that entry point because, again, it's a psychology scam, Anna. So the minute you respond, the hook is in, right? And then once the hook is in, let's say you do respond, they very, very quickly move. There's kind of three phases to pig butchering. Number one is to establish a personal connection, right? To develop that. And what you'll find in these things is really interesting. Maybe for the first month, there's no financial anything. It's just establishing a relationship. Hey, how about that ball game? I know you're in San Francisco. Wow, the Niners look great. They start building a relationship that really is nothing to do with business, right? Then it kind of morphs into, hey, I happen to know somebody, or I just made this investment. I'm so glad we reconnected. I'm doing really well. You should think about this. I know a guy or I know a person who can help out. And they quickly start to move the needles towards you could get something from this. And then the absolute telltale sign, the red flag is when they start to either insert fear in the relationship or urgency in the relationship. I have an incredible opportunity. You should jump all over this, but you're going to miss out if you don't. Sometimes, by the way, they're also very sophisticated because what they might do is give you a reward. So if you make a small initial investment, you'll get a lot of money back, and they'll go, wow, you'll go, wow, that was amazing. So a lot of times they bait the hook and they sweeten it by giving you money back or giving you a reward back. And as I tell folks, when it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. If every other investment's yielding 10% and you just got back 30 on a small investment, that's a big problem. So don't even get that far, right? So the minute it goes financial and the minute it goes fear or urgency, that tells you that you're more than likely dealing with somebody who's not who's not legit. The other thing I would say is if you do in fact have somebody reaching out to you saying, hey, it's been a long time, let's reconnect. And you want to say, fine, maybe this is a legitimate person, meet at a Starbucks, right? Don't do it online. See if the person actually shows up. Because, there is that small chance that this is in fact some lost contact that's reaching out to you. But in point of fact, be super skeptical. When that first touch point comes in, be skeptical and then just follow the logic. If they come in, They start to build a relationship over a period of time, X period of time, and then that quickly moves into, wow, amazing opportunity, I'm connected, and you better move fast. Those are absolute, signs of the fact that they're running the playbook.
Mm-hmm. So if we suspect we are targeted by a scam, what is the best course of action?
Well, I'm just going to give you my personal opinion on things that I do because I get these texts constantly like, "Hey, Frank, is this still you?" I got one yesterday. I never respond. I absolutely never respond. And my thinking on it is, if it's a professional relationship, they're going to ding me or connect through LinkedIn, and now I've got some connection to that person professionally. So first and foremost, unsolicited, doesn't respond, doesn't connect. You don't connect to it. If the text includes shared information, so we went to the same high school, we did this, and that. Again, be very, very skeptical. How did that happen? My advice first and foremost is don't respond.
Okay.
And what you'll see, if it's a scam, they'll be persistent for a while, then they'll go away, right? If in fact it's a lost connection, they might find another way to get with you if they really want to connect. So that's issue number one. Number two, do not share financial information. Do not share lifestyle status. Do not share where you live. If let's say you decide to make the connection, say I'm going to talk to this individual, be very skeptical of the information you share with the individual, right? Because they could be somebody augmenting their profile and really starting to get you done up. The other thing I do that's very interesting, and maybe it's the dad and granddad in me. When I get these texts, I text my kids and I go, "Hey, somebody just reached out to me from a number I don't know. If they reach out to you, ignore it." Because again, the profiles, through profiles, they know who my kids are and so on and so forth. And oftentimes they're very sophisticated and they'll work through a family member to get to you. So I'll tell them to ignore it. Never share financial information, never share personal information, those kinds of things. And where possible, if someone reaches out and there's a shared event, like maybe a high school reunion or some Christmas party, and you decide to take that leap, then say, "Hey, let's meet there." Because at that event, you're going to have other people that can either validate or invalidate the shared connection. Like, if Joe shows up at the annual Christmas party from 3 companies ago and no one knows who Joe is, Joe's not Joe, right? So if you're going to go down that road and you're really anxious to make the connection, then do it in a place that's public where there's other people that can reinforce the shared experience. Otherwise, my advice is just ignore it and move on with life.
Mm-hmm. So from your background and experience in fraud prevention and online security, can you share some best practices for companies to ensure the users' online safety and maybe prevent them from being exploited by scammers? Do companies even have this sort of moral obligation to do so?
Oh, sure. I mean, this is an ethical imperative. At Arkose, we take it very seriously. At Arkose, our position is threefold. First of all, to protect people during their online journey. It's about protecting people because it's, the internet and the digital economy it can be a very scary place. So, we look at it from 3 perspectives. A company has the imperative to block intruders, illegitimate, people that are trying to get in, to block them. We do that by making it very expensive. We then share data from those attempts with our customers to say, "Hey, watch out because we just saw this." And that allows our customers to strengthen the data, to protect it, or to minimize the value associated with somebody taking it. And then the third thing we do is real world consequences. We partner with law enforcement and other customers and use the legal system where we can to take down some of these adversaries. So first and foremost, absolutely, companies have an imperative to do this, and it's unethical not to. Our job as fraud fighters, all of us in cybersecurity, is to protect the people that transact the digital economy. And that's a very missional, intentional statement that we take at heart here at our company. So I start with that. First, and number two, I would say at an individual, recognize how much data has bled out there. Okay, so make sure that at your personal level, your privacy settings are turned up really high. That you're using browsers that are protected. That you're always up to date with your information in terms of fraud prevention and malware and those kinds of things. As I said earlier, don't respond to unsolicited texts. Be vigilant about what you're saying online and what I'm putting online. Have a very small footprint. Partner with companies who actually protect. One of the interesting things, for example, if you're on a dating platform, is companies will use or bad guys will use all the enormous amount of information online to use bots to create synthetic accounts or to get into accounts and take over profiles. And so you have to be very careful that you partner with reputable companies when you do this information. That's super important. Again, all the standard stuff, don't share passwords. You get a text saying, "Hey, I forgot the password, let me do that." Monitor your stuff constantly, not just your your financial information, but what's your digital footprint? What's out there that I don't want out there? People put stuff up and then forget about it, and it's really important that you curate that data constantly. And then obviously, I'm a big believer, and if you really believe that this is a lost connection that wants to have a meaningful kind of reconnect and get back in community with you, that you find a neutral place with somebody, travel with somebody to go meet up at a Starbucks and go, oh, it really is this individual, and not respond to unsolicited texts, no matter how compelling they might sound. AI has changed the landscape for this, because what happens now, as I said, is all the things that normally people wouldn't know, all those shared connections, like what bar did we go to? I teach at Santa Clara University as an MBA adjunct, and at my other job, and I've been doing that for almost 13 years. There's a very well-known bar right behind the school called the Hut, and the Hut was just rebuilt, but for years the Hut, people would go up and put dollar bills in the ceiling, and there was just thousands of them. Well, if you've never been to Santa Clara and you've never frequented, you would never know that. So if somebody said, hey, Frank, I was in your class 5 years ago, haven't connected in a while. Remember when we met at the Hut and you were making fun of that one, and you're like, oh, there's some shared experience here that lower your guard, right? So to me is be very, very careful of that. Be very skeptical, and don't respond to it. Stay informed. $4 billion in the U.S. alone last year. That's a big target, right? That's a big incentive. So a lot of people are doing this. It's not a random outlier. This is a very pervasive thing. So stay informed as an individual. As I said, share information with your family when these kinds of things happen, because they might try to vector in backwards. So all in all, just a high degree of skepticism as you're dealing with unknown individuals. And then again, get on a Zoom call, but beware of Zoom. It might be a deep fake. But if someone's unwilling to show you who they are, they're likely not the individual they purport to be.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned AI and deep fakes as upcoming or current trends in online scams. So are there any other new types of scams that consumers should be aware of?
Yeah, look, I think technology is changing the playing field in this way. We deal with a lot of scams. One of the biggest ones right now, for example, we deal with, Anna, is something we call SMS toll fraud. SMS toll fraud is when somebody hijacks a text workflow. So imagine you go to your bank and you want to sign up for an account, and the bank goes, I want to make sure it's you. Before we take another step, I'm going to text you a code. And so you enter your phone number, they text you a code. Every time they text you a code, it's cost them money, right? And so we're seeing enormous SMS toll frauds. We have one company, for example, that we just spoke to, that's losing over $20 million a year in hijacked flows. What typically happens there is, people get numbers, they collude with carriers. These adversaries collude with carriers in places where numbers are expensive. So think places like Indonesia and Vietnam and Kazakhstan, places where the cell numbers are very expensive. And then they use bots to take those cell numbers and put them into these SMS flows. And so just imagine that you're a bank, and suddenly 1 million new accounts show up, and they enter 1 million cell numbers, and the bank sends you a text, right? Assume that text costs 20 cents each. Think about, in that very small time frame, that attack is just an enormous amount of money. And so we see that as a pervasive threat today. There's SMS toll fraud is a huge threat. Account takeover scams with credential stuffing are a huge threat that we see today. So much information is online. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, all of us found out again that our social security numbers and records had been leaked. That was all over the news. And sure enough, I went and checked the site, and yeah, we're all out there, right? My whole family was involved in that. That information is put into bots. Those bots then either try to take over accounts, or they create synthetic accounts. So that's the thing. So account takeover continues to be a really big issue for us. Scraping, where even on platforms that offer Gen AI, where someone might front end it, pretend to be a platform, and what they're doing is that they're scraping data from some other site and replicating that as if it was their own. So we have a Chat GPT protection that we sell companies. That's really important. So we see all kinds of very creative frauds all around: new account registrations, account takeovers, compromises, and all around money. And one particular thing I would focus on for your readers, we are now in a season where, I'm not sure, Anna and Gene, if you guys get this, but almost every other day I get a text from one of the political candidates saying, please donate. I've I voted for both parties in my life at different times, and I've given money to both parties at different times in my life. So that means I'm on both lists, right? So people now send me these things. Well, what you have to worry about is you get a text saying, "Hey, things are tough. This is a consequential election. Please give money." Everything hangs in the balance. It's got that same fear and urgency associated with it. And you go, "I'm going to donate to my candidate of choice." So you hit the money, you send the money. How do you know that website's really a candidate and not, a nation state that stood up a website that's actually taking that money and using it for nefarious purposes? That is a huge problem in election cycles. So I would say to people in this cycle, another thing that we're seeing is, people are really focused on how do you manipulate or use this event to drive fraudulent activities. We were a big part of the Olympics on it. We protected one of the big streaming companies that was streaming the Olympics. We saw a massive increase in volume as soon as the Olympics started because everybody was focused on streaming, getting online, and trying to use those accounts to watch their favorite event. So oftentimes there's these focal points that are either sports related, political, whatever it happens to be, that fraudsters take advantage of to try to trick you into giving up either personal information or money. So SMS toll fraud, account takeovers, credential stuffing, election interference, nefarious activities online. Be very skeptical. Those are all big frauds that are coming. And my expectation is during the next few months, as people start to get focused on the election, you're going to see more and more of these kinds of texts that say, "Hey, I'm with this ticket. Please give me money. If ASAP is super important. I'm with the other ticket. Give me money." And I would say that if you are in fact, involved in the political process and you want to support a candidate, go directly to those candidates, pages. Don't respond to texts or emails that could be phishing attacks. That's a very common thread. So we're predicting that there's going to be a significant increase in that level of activity over the next few months, just simply associated with the election. So that's a big issue for us as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that the government will also work on preventing these types of fraud, like especially regarding election?
I think it's very difficult for the government to be able to stop what I just mentioned, because think about it. Let's say tomorrow I stand up a website that looks like either party's website, RNC, DNC, or maybe independent, right? Let's say you're voting in the middle. And I stand up a website that says support this candidate and give money, everything hangs in the balance. It happens so quickly, it's very difficult for policymakers and regulators to jump ahead of that. And so because of the dynamism in this space and things move so fast, the government's always playing catch up, right? And they have an important role. Policymakers have an important role to play. But if you think about it, it always starts this way. Uh-oh, something bad happened. Let's have a hearing. Let's develop a policy, right? And that process is years in the making, whereas the fraud happened and moved on. So I think people need to be skeptical and protect themselves, because either policymakers or regulators are often, reactive, not proactive. And it's very difficult to stop that. So I think the government has a vested interest, and I'm sure that there's very, very solid people that are focused on this. Gina and I have spoken with several government folks trying to influence policy making. There's some really good people, irrespective of party, that are really focused on trying to keep people safe. But by their nature, the institution is reactive, not proactive, and that's where the fraudsters see an opportunity. So I do think that there are well-intentioned people there that are trying to solve the problem. I just think they can't get ahead of it. It's too fast.
What developments do you foresee in the future in the field of online security, and maybe some takeaway message if you want to share something?
Yeah, well, let me start with the takeaway. So we are at Arkose, we are committed to keeping people safe as they transact the digital economy. So we take that very seriously. I call that the what we do. The how we do are the technologies and measures and countermeasures that we deploy to protect people as they transact. But specifically, we focus on three things: making the cost of intrusion difficult for the adversary. Now, why is that important? Because something you should talk about in this article that's not well known to people, there's an entire ecosystem on it called crime as a service. Believe it or not, there are entire platforms that act like subscription services that have data, they have tools, they have bots. You show up, you go, "I want to run an SMS toll fraud." They get the numbers for you, they give you the targets, they rent you the bots, and you simply pay a fee. So in that environment, making the cost of intrusion difficult and expensive becomes important, because these very proactive commercialized services are attacking your business. So we focus on making that cost of intrusion very, very expensive. Number two, sharing all the data we get from threat vectors across all the industries we protect. Because one of the things we've learned is that a fraudster that may do a fraud in gaming will eventually do that same fraud in banking. These things travel to different industries. So, federating threat information and saying, I saw this over here, be careful, and having the proper countermeasures in place as they move over is important. So our second principle is share data and allow people to use that data to harden their targets or to minimize the value that they might derive from a fraudster getting in. One quick example on that: we support a company that one of the major banks is a credit card issuer. Our customer issues credit cards through that bank and provides people a $100 gift card every time they sign up for a credit card. It's standard stuff you've seen online, right? Well, if you're a nefarious person today, you can go online and for about $20 in terms of total payment, you can get everything you need to know to be able to get through, to know your customer, workflow, the KYC workflow. Well, if I'm being paid a $100 gift card and it costs me 20 to get through, I do that deal all day long. In this particular situation, when we see a high risk and we share that risk information with the customer, they lower the value of the offering. And now the gift card goes from $100 to $15. And now it costs you 20 to get 15, no one's going to do that deal. So that's an example of using risk data to really protect what you're offering, because now it takes away the incentive to do so. And then finally, real world consequences. We've done some great work on something called Storm 1152. Gene can talk about that. We partnered with Microsoft and law enforcement to take down a big crime as a service platform in Vietnam. We were part of that. And again, we take that very seriously. Where we can, partnering with our customers, we want to make sure that we are providing real world consequences so that ultimately when you combine those three things together, consumers can feel safe transacting the digital economy with customers that we protect, right? We're a B2B company, so those consumers interact with their customers that are protected by Arkose. That's really our mission, to make sure that in those interactions they're safe and they're not being compromised and they can transact. It's an arms race, Anna and Gene, as you guys know. The thing about this space is we adapt and improvise, they adapt and improvise, and we're constantly doing that. But definitely that's the takeaway: is be diligent in your online activities. Work with companies that use best of breed, solutions like ours to protect people, and stay informed. And then, I travel to England a lot, and they have a great phrase over there. It's crazy when you're traveling there, but it says, see it, right? If you see it, say it, sort it, right? And so, as I just told you in the earlier example, when I see something, the dad in me immediately goes, I got to tell my kids, like, beware, watch out for this. So share information. Like, hey, I just heard this happen. Be really careful, watch out for this kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you so much. Great.
Super nice speaking with you, and really enjoyed it.